everyone. I'm Allie Pugh. I'm the fashion director at Goop. I'm so excited to be here today to chat with Kenneth Cole. Kenneth is an American designer, social advocate, and visionary who believes in business and philanthropy are interdependent. His global company, Kenneth Cole Productions, creates modern, versatile, and functional shoes, clothing, and accessories that make daily dressing effortless. For over 35 years, Kenneth Cole has leveraged his passion and unique brand platform, seeking to make a meaningful impact on people's wardrobes as well as communities in need. We will discuss social impact and the future of fashion and spend time answering questions from some of you. So Kenneth, I want to start off, and you started your company during a recession. Work closely with HIV AIDS crisis. You've been an advocate for mental health and more. Can you give us a brief overview about how you built your brand, what kind of creativity came out of your experience, and how that past experience has helped navigate your business through current times?
So thank you, Allie. And it's really a privilege to do this. And I love that. I love that I could do it with you. I love that I could do it with Goop and what Kenneth has built. And thank you, Jordana, for your generous comments. So I think in some ways I reflect often, and my journey in some way has often, there's lessons that I feel I need to often relearn. I started my business in 1982 early on, and I say that quickly, but and it was during a recession, and it was a kind of a crazy, difficult time. And so I had very little money and very little time to get into business because I knew I would not likely survive the limited cash that I had available. So I, at the time, I knew I needed to move quickly. I named the company Kenneth Cole because there wasn't the internet then, and I didn't know, I couldn't take a chance of making up a name, hoping that years later it isn't contested and there isn't troubles with it. And so I called the company Kenneth Cole Inc. It ran to Italy, knowing I had a better chance of getting credit from an Italian shoe factory that needed business than from an American bank that didn't. Came back with a cool line of lady shoes. And then I needed to sell them, and there were two choices in those days. I could take a room at the Hilton Hotel, this is during the New York shoe show, or I could take, which wasn't cheap and lacked individuality. There were 1,100 people that did that, 30 some odd companies before. Or I could take a room, or I could take a showroom in the 2-block radius of the Hilton Hotel, which clearly I didn't have the money or the time to do that. So on a whim, I called a friend who was in the trucking business. I said, if I could figure out how to park one of your 40-foot trailers on the corner of 6th Avenue and 56th Street, pretty much across the street from the Hilton Hotel, will you lend it to me? He said, sure, jerk, this is New York. You can't park a bicycle for 10 minutes, let alone a 40-foot truck for 3 days. If I can figure it out, will you lend it to me? If you can figure it out, I'll help you decorate it. So I called the mayor's office, Mayor Koch. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, how does one get permission to park a trailer on the corner of 6th Avenue, 56th Street, December 2nd? Sorry, Sunday, don't. This is New York. We get permission under two circumstances: if you're a utility company servicing the streets, such as AT&T or Con Ed, or if you're a production company shooting full-length motion picture, because we were going through an I Love New York campaign in the early 80s, and we probably still are today. So that afternoon, I went to a stationery store and changed my letter from Kenneth Cole Inc. to Kenneth Cole Productions Inc. And I filed for a permit that afternoon to shoot a full-length motion picture called The Birth of a Shoe Company. I opened for business 10 days later on December 2nd. And compliments to Mayor Koch, I had 2 policemen as my doormen. And I had stanchions, Klieg lights. I had a director. Sometimes I was filming his camera, sometimes there wasn't. And we saw every important buyer in New York. And the more important they were, the longer we asked them to wait. And we sold 40,000 pair of shoes in 2.5 days. And I tell that story often because it speaks to the importance of resourcefulness and problem solving, and that the best solution is rarely the most expensive, almost always the most creative. And the company traded on the New York Stock Exchange for 20 years under the symbol KCP. And today we are still a production company. So that's how the business started. And then a year or so into business, I was looking to figure out how to relate to people, to customers in a meaningful way. And I've always felt that I needed to understand not just what was on their body, but what was on their mind, and what inspired them and what motivated thoughts and their decisions and their purchases. And at the time, there was this pervasive consciousness which we hadn't seen since the 60s. And to a large degree, it was about hunger in Ethiopia, but it was Live Aid, World Aid, Hands Across America. There was all these initiatives happening. So, but nobody was talking about this big black cloud that was looming as big as day or the absence of day. And especially over the fashion business, and it was HIV/AIDS, because you couldn't speak about AIDS then. And there was this looming pandemic, and everybody knew it was coming, but nobody would talk about it because of the pervasive stigma. And if you did, you were perceived to be at risk, which meant you were either intravenous drug user, or you were a gay man, or Haitian. So, and stigma was so terrible. So in any case, I saw it as an opportunity to speak about what few were and others hadn't. And we did a campaign that spoke about the fact that nobody was speaking about HIV. And it changed me. It changed the man, it changed the brand. I joined the board of AMFAR a year or two later, about a year later, actually. Dr. Krim was with me at the time. I had aligned with AMFAR. And then I went on to become AMFAR's chairman in '04. And we had a profound impact on millions of people's lives. And it has in many ways defined me. And then I did a campaign in '04 at the same time that I became chairman with Mark Seliger. And we went to South Africa and photographed Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and Zaki Ahmed and LA, Elizabeth Taylor and Elton John. We brought together all these global icons with one image, and all who were siloed, all who were iconic and with extraordinary passion and ability to inspire and engage. And we put out one message which said, if we're not infected, we're still all affected. And if AIDS exists anywhere, essentially exists everywhere. So a lot of lessons over the years. And then I went on and I accepted an appointment from the UN as a UNAIDS ambassador for UNAIDS. But interestingly, and I worked closely with Dr. Fauci and Ambassador Birx, who were two of the leading AIDS activists, and they were for 20 years, both of them. And Ambassador Birx ran PEPFAR, and in his capacity at NIH, Dr. Fauci was paramount and center of all data, and everything kind of flowed through NIH. And watching them now lead the response with COVID is, it just talks about how so much of this has come full circle. So I look back, I consider myself to be very fortunate over the years to have had this privilege and this opportunity. And I think the industry is at a critical place right now, and how we come through it, we'll talk. We have some thoughts. I think one regard, we've got this free reset. We've got a chance now to redefine ourselves, reposition ourselves, in which our industry is so badly needed. So in many ways, I think this could turn out to be a blessing if we approach it the right way.
Yeah, I always love hearing your story and how you've created this meaningful DNA of your business that comes from you. You often say that fashion is here for good, which we actually use for the phrase as the title of our chat today. You've always been a leader in fashion for your social activism, clearly from the story, which has clearly been very important to you. Tell us why you've always felt that way, and touch on why you feel that way, especially now in light of what's going on.
So I feel that fashion is one of the most powerful forms of self-expression, and it's available to everybody, and it's also unique to everybody. And what's fashionable to me may not be to you, and what's fashionable to you today may not be tomorrow. But it's a platform and its ability that people default to often, and they get out of bed in the morning and they have a clean slate. They get a chance to introduce themselves to the world on their own terms, and very often people don't get to know any more about you than how you represent yourself. So I think so fashion is important, but it's questionably relevant, and in and of itself. And I often remind my associates, there's nobody really needs anything that we sell, and it's very humbling, but it's important that we remind ourselves of that. And to the degree we can make it part of something that is relevant and is important, then we have a reason to exist. absent of that, I don't know that we do. And we certainly don't have a reason to give all that we do and all that I ask of them every day, to bring to the process. And because you can't do this casually, and it takes a lot of a commitment individually. So how do we, at the end of the day, make it relevant? And part of it is kind of in my social engagement and bringing in all of that marrying it into the workplace and to business and community. I was, as running a public company for 20 years, I was often challenged, do I have the right as running a public company to use company dollars to talk for philanthropy, for social initiatives? And I make the case that not only are business and community not unrelated, they're interrelated and they're interdependent, and they are the proverbial hand that feeds each other. So I think it all kind of comes together for me. And I do believe, as I said, that I need to relate to the customer. I need to know not just what's on their body, but what's on their mind, and not just what they stand in, but what they stand for. And I have looked throughout the years to fuse them all of that into the brand. And it makes it a little bit more complicated, but more meaningful at the end. And today, that is what life is today. I think that as we come through this, customers and consumers have a very clear sense, and I do think that they're going to be insistent. They're going to be laser focused on purpose, and that's very much a part of the value equation. And I do think, and for us, it's very much about the ongoing viability of the planet that we live on, and the inhabitants that exist within it. And it's the public health and it's the environment. And those are the two ongoing issues I do think that are prevalent, and they will be for a while in people's minds, especially coming through this process. We used to talk about what you stand in, and what you stand in as what it's not just what you stand for, it's also what you stand. It's not what you stand in, it's what you stand for, but also today is what you stand on, and that's how we marry in that into the equation.
Yeah, I think people are thinking in much more thoughtful, meaningful terms now. You're also, you're such a creative thinker and a leader. With the current climate, have you had to get creative and change the way you operate internally with your own team and keeping morale and spirits high?
So this is hard because we've had to make some really hard changes, as has everybody, and we need to stay viable. Otherwise, if I don't have an ongoing business, I can't service our customers. I can't service any of our stakeholders. So we've made some very tough decisions, but I've worked hard to engage our associates, and every week we have a phone call, and every week I'm visually present, like I am here, as are they, and we have a discussion and we talk about the reality that of the world that we're in, and hopefully they leave feeling somewhat like they could be part of the solution and that they're not the problem, and I do think they can, and that's the only way we're going to get there. And I think that, and we also bring together cross-functional groups, and we're working on creative problems, and I'm laser focused on reimagining the business and PC, which is post-corona, and what is our reason to exist? What will the world look like, and how will we exist within it? And that's a question I ask myself every day, and I ask my associates, and that's a discussion that we have ongoing. And the last thing too is we did a campaign that we started in, I think it was about 5 years ago, which was referred to as the courageous class, and with the notion that the real models, we used to say, are the role models, and then we used to identify people in the community that inspired us, and those were our members of our courageous class. And they inspire the brand, and they inspire us individually and collectively, and they give of themselves in important ways. And so what we did now is we launched an initiative about 2 weeks ago, and focused on our first responders. And we asked all of our associates to recommend people in their lives that were that, and we all have them. And we shined a light on them. We sought to tell their story, and we still do on our Instagram feeds, both the brand and the man. And we encourage them others to recommend people, and we look to celebrate these individuals who are heroes, in effect. I mean, they go to work so that we don't, because we can't. And it's a crazy, crazy time. And what I also do is on my own, I establish what I could refer to as the boardroom, BORED. And every week or so, I do these personal reflections on my personal Instagram. And I share thoughts on where we are in the kind of state of the world. So, I mean, how do we engage each other? That's the challenge. And that's what I seek to do, consistently with my associates and with our customers, if I can.
That's amazing. That's so inspiring what you're doing for first responders and then with your own company. Going back to kind of what you said about post-corona, which I'm going to steal that PC. When this is all over, if you were to look into a crystal ball, what would you predict for the future of retail? Do you think this pandemic will really put a nail in the brick and mortar model for good?
So, I think what it's going to do is, I think it's going to motivate change in a way that is so badly needed to be motivated. And our industry was kind of in a really difficult place, and it was we had a really hard time figuring out how it was all pieces were going to fit together. And so I do think we're going to see a reset. And I do think that, the people that say, and I've said this over the years, the people that say, I'm going to just tighten my belt and I'm going to get through it, those people won't be here in a few years, because this isn't about tightening your belt, because we're going to be a different population when we get through this. We're going to be different in the way we think about our lives. We're going to be different in the way we consume, different in the way we transact. And so if we're effective in our ability to reimagine, what our new role is and what is our reason to exist, and then I think you're going to see a more relevant business than we've had in a while. And we're going to be more engaging. We're going to be more experiential. We're going to have a reason to get consumers to interact with the brand. I do believe, and I'm dead focused on trying to get ourselves to be as agile as we can be, so we can respond. I've always thought that, and this is the great thing about the fashion business, inherently, innately, it's built on a platform of change, because the only thing that's consistent, that's constant in our business is change. It's everything that is won't be. And I believe that it's not about the new normal, it's about the next normal, and what is going to be that next normal. So, so how do we build that very fragile but critically important platform that has the ability to respond inherently to opportunities and to change as it comes and as it represents? Because I'm not sure any of us can figure this out. I'm reading, as I'm sure you are, and a lot of us are reading other, thought leaders on how they see this playing out down the road. But I don't think anybody could have anticipated this, and I'm not sure anybody can anticipate what's next. But I think if we can have a platform that has the ability to respond to things as they come along, then we all win. And it's counterintuitive, because in business school you're taught to amortize an investment over a period of time. This is about being prepared to abandon it as quickly as need be. So it's as I said, counterintuitive to everything that you learn. But we're going to be fine, and because we have to be. So, but I also think this is what makes the industry great: the ability to reimagine and recontemplate. And nobody needs what we sell, so I have to make you think you do. Glad you thought it and think it again. But I have to make it relevant, and I can do that now, and I'm excited about the opportunity. And I've got a great team of associates who are equally excited.
And you kind of touched on this throughout this conversation so far, but what do you think fashion can do best during this time?
I think fashion has the ability to, to reinvent itself. And I think we also, as a community, over the years, we've come together and we've circled the wagons and held hands in times like this. And you saw a lot of fashion companies making, dropping everything and making PPEs and making masks and just wanting to help, trying to understand how they can help. And wanting to bring resources to this. And I think, our industry, there is an emotional relationship with the customer. And I think that's somewhat unique in our industry. And I think it kind of comes to the surface at times like this.
Yeah, for sure. And how right now are you continuing your conversation with customers who just simply aren't shopping?
So I am, what I try to do every day is to, first of all, is to put myself in their shoes in the hope that they'll want to put themselves in ours. And so what the first thing we did after this COVID announced is, I think we initiated this effort with COVID-19 emergency response fund with the UN. And I felt that, again, it gave us a purpose. We were, and I have that relationship with them, and we all felt this was the right thing to do, and they were doing great work, and the funds were going and being allocated in a way that we all felt good about it. So that went up right away on the website, and then right after that came the big message: the last thing anyone needs now is a new pair of shoes, and that is. And that also is absolute truth, and we all know that. And so again, putting ourselves in their shoes and being able to imagine, to think like they think and understand what they think. So how do we? So recognizing that, so that was kind of prevalent in our messaging for a period of time, and then we launched this courageous class with first responders, and that we just all love. We've met some great, wonderful heroes in this process, and we've had a chance to get to know them a little bit, help tell their stories, and hopefully we can keep doing that for a while.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to ask you one more question to wrap this up. You have such an amazing mental health initiative. Can you tell us more about that?
So this is something I wasn't really intending to do this, but I stepped away from HIV, from AMFOR about a year ago, a little over. And then we had all these relationships with all these great organizations and some of the leading mental health organizations. We were working with some of them in the organization, and then I met them in different ways. NAMI, Bring Change to Mind, Child Mind, Crisis Text Line. And so people had asked me if I would agree to work on an anti-stigma campaign, acknowledging the fact that stigma is as bad in mental health today as it was with HIV 20 years ago. And also recognizing that 1 in 200 people today live with HIV, 1 in 4 will live with mental health conditions, and according to the World Health Organization. So, and then I argue it's 4 and 4, because if it isn't you, it's someone you love, or it's somebody in your network or somebody in the workplace. But especially today, in this, what we're going through today, with half the world in isolation, with most of the world in isolation, and half of them alone, quarantining alone, this is devastating on people. So the timing probably was never more important. So we put together this coalition, which is representative of almost all of the mental health organizations. They all said, "You do this, we're behind you." So they all got on board. We formed this mental health coalition, and of the NGOs, the leading mental health providers in the country, some of the biggest and most important brands, businesses, celebrities, and influencers. And we're going to set out to change the narrative, non-clinical and non-stigmatized vocabulary. And we're going to look to launch this in May during Mental Health Awareness Month, with some very impressive people who are equally inspired and committed. And we're hopefully we're going to put forth, enable them a platform where they can engage in a very unique way. And we're very excited about it. And I think it's something that where I feel will be welcomed, and a need that is pervasive, and it's something that, you know, post-COVID will probably be even more so than others. I read actually that after SARS, that all of those that were quarantined, 30% came out with incremental symptoms of depression, another 30 of post PTSD. So this is so much more extensive and so much greater that it's mind-boggling, the thought of the impact that this crisis is going to have on people's the challenge it's going to put forth to people's mental health. So so this is something we're looking forward to, we're excited about, and stay tuned. I also just did a post on my my boardroom about this yesterday.
That's amazing. I think that's truly inspiring and helpful to people more than just your customer, but reaching such a wider audience. There is one question that came in from the audience that I'll quickly ask you. Do you think the industry will become more do you think the model will change, that we're more buy now, wear now post-COVID? Or do you think our seasons will kind of stay the same and how our wholesale retail schedule works?
Well, I think that the customer, the user, is going to drive the bus, and I think we need to figure out how to give them what they want, when they want it, the way they want it. So, and it's inherent on us to shorten the supply chain and bring that right product to market at the time that in a way that it's most useful. So I think a lot changes. I think we get much more agile, and we learn how to operate more efficiently, more effectively. So I do think that's going to have to happen. Did I answer your question? I think I answered your question.
Yes, that did. You know, I think that you kind of touched on this with your mental health initiative, but you know, one person did ask, you know, that you have an inner confidence that we're going to be fine, that's going to be fine. I think a lot of us are feeling that, maybe some days more than others. But for people who are dealing with anxiety, you know, how are you staying grounded through this and keeping your company grounded as well?
Well, I think I spoke to some of it. I think one of them is, again, putting myself in people's shoes, just recognizing the trauma that people are going through. It's horrific, and it's not just it's the impact on people's lives, and tens of thousands of lives have been lost, but millions of people's livelihoods have been disrupted. And so how do we appropriately be respectful of that and acknowledge that in whatever way we can, and go forward and service the community in a way that you can, with the resources you have and the circumstances that are available to you. I mean, it's terrible for some people right now, but I do think that there is a silver lining, and I think we have to with it. You know, in my business, in good times, everybody wants to just do what they're doing and do more of it. And it's only in tough times that people looked for the creative alternative. And I've always tried to be that creative alternative. And I think that if people just need to think about, and if they can somehow imagine how they can be part of where we're going, as opposed to where, and let go of where we've been, then there'll be room for everybody, and there'll be a great need for everybody. So I know that it's not going to make people who right now are on the short end of this feel better, but I do think we are going to come through this, and we're going to be a more energized, more effective community, and hopefully more sympathetic and more empathetic than we've been at the same time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's more questions rolling in. So a question about sustainability. You have sustainability components to your business, and you touched on that people are going to become more meaningful with their purchases. How do you think that's going to affect the way people shop?
Look, I think today the customer, the consumer is very discerning, and they should be. And at the end of the day, you're going to own this planet. You're going to inherit it. So we need to leave it better than we found it, or at least not worse. And that's a lofty task. And what we say is our goal is to do more, leave less, and that our intent is leaving a smaller footprint on a road to a sustainable future. So these are goals, these are ambitions. We're looking at product, looking at operations, looking at community, looking at 3 different buckets, and we're bringing resources to each. And it's not, and today it's not always efficient, and you're not always able to address everything to the degree you'd like, but we are systematically looking to become more and more of what this is. And as I said before, I believe wholeheartedly that, and we're going to become of leaving of a better environment, and servicing the environment, and also servicing its inhabitants. And public health is something that I've always done, as we discussed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And do you think that the economy will impact sustainability? Do you think that people will be willing to spend the extra money to buy something that's sustainable, meaningful, thoughtful, that, they're actually thinking about these purchases?
I think that's, there are things that you need to do, the things you want to do. And that's the thing you want to do today. I think today people are going to provide for their needs first. And so there's going to be a moratorium, I think, for a little bit. And because we're going to need to get through this transition into PC, and into a more viable and more energized and more efficient environment. And I do think we get there. I think right now I'm not sure how much more people will pay, but I think people will absolutely be conscious of their decisions, and it will absolutely play in their decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, well, I want to just wrap this up. It's been such an amazing honor to be here and chat with you, Kenneth, and hear about how you built your business and how you have engaged your customers throughout it. And is there anything else you want to say before we close this out?
No, just as we were talking before we went live. It's just thinking about what we're doing right now. The notion of us all convening through this virtual platform. That, I mean, for this group, for Fashion Innovation, to been able to pull together this group of speakers, of thought leaders, and bring an audience together with such little timing, with such a global reach, is extraordinary. We never could have done this before. But this is an example of PC and of the new world. And how does this all now play into our futures? I mean, even if there wasn't a venue that could have accommodated all these people, even if they could have, and there weren't airlines that could have accommodated all these people to convene them. So it's extraordinary. And we're watching the world change, and we're watching people be efficient wherever they are. And are we going to need to have big fancy offices in these big fancy high rises, when we're realizing people can be more productive sometimes wherever they are? Maybe not. And I think everything we're doing, I think we're going to rethink. So it's going to be a very interesting journey. I just hope everybody is well. I hope everybody's taking this stuff seriously, because it is serious. And so several of my brother-in-law just came through it, and he played it out on network television, his illness, Christopher Cuomo, and then his wife, and then 3 other cousins, and everybody is going to be okay. But this is serious. So I just hope everybody's taking care of themselves and acting responsibly.